Let's go to Jonathan Schanzer. He's the Vice President for Research at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies at our studios in Washington, D.C. Jonathan, how surprised are you about what's happening? Mali, Algeria, should we have seen this coming?
Well, not surprised at all, and certainly we should have seen this coming. These various jihadist groups, what we call al-Qaeda affiliates, have been active in North Africa and the Sahel since the early 1990s. Originally, it was a group called the Armed Islamic Group, or GIA, that was active in Algeria. By the late 1990s, it became something called the Salafist Group for Preaching in Combat, or GSPC. Around the time of the Iraq War, it morphed again into al-Qaeda of the Islamic Maghreb. And now what we're seeing, these kidnappers rather, are part of a splinter group, or perhaps even two splinter groups of AQIM, the leader of which was designated a full 6 years ago by the United States Treasury as a person of concern for the financing of terrorism and the spreading of terrorism. So in other words, we have been aware of this jihadi activity by these various al-Qaeda splinter groups for 2 decades plus, and we have really not done anything to neutralize them. And so it was only a matter of time, I believe, until there was some blowback.
It's interesting, Jonathan, some of the parallels I think that we can draw between what's happening there and what happened in Afghanistan in the late 1990s.
Absolutely. Not only were we content to ignore some of these problems that we had been seeing in Afghanistan, the rise of the Taliban, etc., but there's also, I think, a parallel to the kind of geography we're dealing with. In Afghanistan, it was an area of weak central authority where the government had a very difficult time projecting power beyond the capital. I would say that this is largely the case with a lot of these African countries that we're looking at that have these jihadist problems. These sorts of areas, these gray areas, areas of weak central authority, al-Qaeda just salivates over them. Al-Qaeda looks at these as opportunities to exploit, and certainly we're seeing that right now in places like Mali and Algeria. But don't expect not to see this spread. We'll see it in Libya. We'll see it in possibly parts of Tunisia. Really, anywhere where the government can't project the same kind of power that it can in the capital.
We know, of course, that France is calling for more resources from allied countries, including Canada. We heard Secretary of State Hillary Clinton a little bit earlier saying that the U.S. is willing to fund airlift operations for African troops to get to some of these remote regions that are hard to reach. What kind of U.S. involvement could we be looking at here?
Well, I think it's still unclear. You heard from the Secretary of State that she was very noncommittal even about what she knew that was happening on the ground. But, you know, in general, I think there is going to be a debate over whether it is in America's interest to put boots on the ground or to get involved in places like Mali or Algeria. There's a debate about whether we should be getting involved on other fronts where I think that, there is more of a U.S. interest. In fact, we're pulling out of places like Afghanistan and Iraq where we already have skin in the game. So I would expect that with this current administration, this sort of general trend of isolation, I would expect there to be a lot of pushback about getting involved in fronts like these. But at the end of the day, I think they're very important. We're looking at the spread of jihadism. This is an extension of the war on terrorism that we all became aware of back in 2001. It is not abated. It is just simply changing form. And I think that's lost on a great many people right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of jihadism, tell me a little bit about this group that's claiming responsibility for what's happened in Algeria now and sort of how they play into the overall picture.
Sure. Well, it is led by a guy by the name of Mukhtar Belmokhtar. He's, again, one of the former commanders of al-Qaeda of the Islamic Maghreb. He has two different groups. One of them is the signers of a blood oath or some derivation of that name, and another brigade's named after someone who had been martyred in the Algerian conflict in earlier years. It's unclear whether both of them are responsible or if one of them is responsible, but at the end of the day, these are groups, splinter factions that have pledged allegiance to Ayman al-Zawahiri, the head of al-Qaeda. It is very much a part of the al-Qaeda matrix, if you will. I think the bottom line is we're going to see more of these from more splinter factions as you see more international intervention in North Africa.
In the Afghanistan situation, the U.S. went in there in 2001, as you know, will be there likely beyond 2014. What is your take on the situation in Northwest Africa? I mean, is this some kind of quick surgical operation, or is that dreaming? I mean, is this going to stretch into a multi-year long project?
Well, I think it depends on the will of the actors as well as their skill level. I mean, when we talk about ECOWAS, when we talk about African countries providing troops, when we talk about the French providing troops, it's unclear whether they have the professionalism, whether they have a strategic goal that they have in mind. I think we have yet to see parameters set for this conflict, and we have yet to see whether the jihadists are going to be able to respond in kind. A lot of this is just going to play out in real time. There is obviously, a real fear of all of these forces getting entrenched in a conflict that can't end. But at the same time, we can hope that this is done in the kind of professionalism where they're able to dispatch the enemy quickly and get back to just get home.
Jonathan Schanzer coming to us from our studios in Washington. Thanks so much for your time today.
My pleasure. Thank you.